Well, I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm back to do another tier list. Once again, I'm recording this on stream, so you might see me react to comments. This is a sci-fi franchise tier list. I did make this myself. No doubt I forgot to put something on here, but I did put on a few things that I actually can't rank. Like you'll notice the bottom tier there's just can't rank, and that's just because I've not seen the things or enough of the things. Basically that was just because I knew other people might find this template on tier maker, so I thought it'd be nice and put in a few obvious things that I haven't seen enough of. But we'll get into it. This one's a little bit different in that with science fiction, I felt like there was I had a big choice to make when I was starting this, which was, do I include stuff that is only a TV show? Because the last one was purely movie franchises. But I think the thing with sci-fi is that it lends itself to a lot more TV, but it also has a lot of overlap between movies and TV. There's a lot of like sci-fi franchises that have been both. So obviously I would include those, but like, is it fair that when I talk about Star Trek, there is no way that I'm going to just say it's just the movies and ignore the rest of its heritage, because it's important, it's part of its heritage. So by that logic, it made sense to also include just other sci-fi that's only be TV. That's not to say that every sci-fi TV show is here, but like most of the ones that are here are big enough that they've got, that they've got other forms. Maybe not movies, but they've got comic books, they've got lots of other things that make it feel more like a franchise and not just one individual TV show. I don't know if that tracks with every single one of them, but that was my general thinking as I was picking these. But anyway, let's get into it. So simple, S is the top tier, F is the bottom, can't rank is just sort of well, that's exactly what it says, I can't rank. Okay, it's just where I'm going to put things that I can't rank. So we'll get into it. They're just in alphabetical order, so I suppose we'll just go through. Although maybe it would be smart to go through and just eliminate the ones that I know I can't do, since it's not a humongous list. So if I'm looking through this and saying, what can I not rank? I would say that I can't really rank Gamera as of yet. I've seen a few of the 90s movies, but I don't feel comfortable or confident putting that in here. I've not watched Farscape yet, beyond maybe like the first episode once upon a time ago, so I can't rank that. Flash Gordon, I have only seen the movie. I don't really have enough of a familiarity with the older stuff or any of the other material to rank that, I would say. Looking down the list, what do we have here? I've never watched The Outer Limits, so I'll throw that in. Orphan Black, I've only seen maybe a season of, so I can't really do that. Quantum Leap, I've seen the first season of the new show, but I've only seen a handful of episodes of the old show, so I feel like it's too early for me to put that anywhere here. Stargate, I've only ever seen the original movie, and it's got like 3 or 4 TV shows, so I don't feel like I can really do anything with that. And then just looking ahead, is there anything else here? I suppose the only other thing here would be X-Files. I feel like I have a vague opinion on it, but I really haven't seen enough of it to properly put it anywhere. So I think at a glance that's everything that I can't put anywhere. Apologies if I run into one later that I've missed, but I think that's ruling out all the things that I can't have an opinion on in some way or another. So, Aliens. Aliens, the movie, not just the franchise, but the Alien specifically is my favorite movie. Alien is up there as well. They're both 10s. Alien 3 is a flawed film, but it's a very visually interesting film, and obviously it's got an interesting history behind it. Alien Resurrection goes off the deep end and is bad at the end, but I actually kind of enjoy like a good 3/4 of it, I would say, for what it is. But then at least you get into the later stuff. If you're including AVP, which I didn't put that as a separate thing here, so I guess I am. I wouldn't, obviously that drags it down. But then even if you're excluding that, Prometheus and Alien Covenant like really claw at it. So I'm going to try and use a lot of the similar logic I had when I was doing the horror franchise list, which is The fact that it has two amazing movies and a couple of pretty watchable movies means that it still ranks very highly, even though there are some big blemishes before you get to the end. Maybe one day, this new series that's been made for FX or Hulu might be the redemption that the franchise needs. But I don't think you can put it any lower than A tier. That's where I put it on the horror franchise list. Not that I necessarily think that you can compare the two franchise lists or tiers side by side, but it still makes enough sense to me to put there. It's a very important science fiction franchise. It's very influential. So many things have taken from H.R. Giger's designs in it, and the overall look and feel of the world, and it's so rich. Especially if we're looking at this, different to the horror tier list. Science fiction is often about creating complete worlds that we're in, right? So this is a future where we've got space travel, and it's ultra corporate, and they're finding this alien life form. But this is fully fleshed out, living, breathing world. Especially once you've seen a couple of the movies. Aliens really establishes and expands upon what Alien already introduced. So, I might even bump that up to the S by the time we're done, but it's at least in the A tier. I think that's a fair place to start it. Avatar. So this is a weird one because we're only 2 movies in, right? I believe there's maybe some comics or something as well, but I've never really read any of those. And that's very much the extended. There's the core parts of the franchise, and then you've got your extended stuff, which is kind of optional, right? And I actually quite like Avatar, and I really liked Avatar Way of the Water. I think the filmmaking is phenomenal, the world's beautiful, and I think it's doing a lot of really just really solid storytelling with solid, compelling motivations and characters. The characters might not be as iconic as as creations as other franchises have, but I think the storytelling is very good, especially in the second movie. Um, first one's it's a little derivative of other things, but I appreciate how earnest it is, and I enjoy being in Pandora for the runtime of the movies. And I can see it getting better as it goes. I can see it keep escalating because 2 was better than 1. I can see 3 being better. I kind of trust James Cameron to keep us building on what he started and raising the stakes and everything that's happened before, informing where it goes next. But I can't rank this based on where it might be after a third or fourth or fifth movie. I can only go with what's here just now. So it doesn't have a bad movie, unlike a lot of these franchises we're going to get to. So I actually don't know where to put Avatar. I actually think I might skip it for now. I feel like once I've set more of a baseline, I can come back to Avatar and sort of put it where, my gut instinct right now is thinking maybe C tier, as in is pretty good, but it's not exceptional and important as some of the other ones. But it's not bad, and I don't think it's got either movie's bad. I think they're both good. So I'm thinking C tier, but I feel like I want to maybe leave it and come back just to see where the shape of this tier list. That's whenever I do a tier list, there's always a shape that forms where you start to establish what an A means, what a B means, what a C means, and I don't really know yet what a lot of these mean. So yeah, you're thinking B, Cindy. I can see the argument for B as well, based on what I said. I can. Oh god, mixing the TV shows as well is tough. That honestly, that's the hook of this tier list, because I think if it was just the movie franchises, it would be much quicker than the horror one, and it would probably be relatively easy. I think having to compare the TV show franchises to the movie franchises makes this a lot harder. It does, because the one thing that TV shows have that movies don't, to an extent, is the amount of time you spend in that world. So something like Babylon 5, you're spending 5 seasons with those characters. You're getting way more attached to the characters in a TV show compared to a movie. It doesn't have the big budget as a movie. It doesn't have the same level of spectacle, at least back in these days. I mean, modern shows are kind of there, to be honest, but there was certainly a time when that was true. So that's really tough. Do you know what I'm thinking now that I'm looking at these movies and franchises? I'm thinking that this tier list is going to be higher in quality than the horror list. And what I mean by that is the horror list, you had your S, your A's, and maybe your B's, and then you can sort of see the quality getting dipping. I've got a funny feeling that on this tier list, even a C is going to still be pretty good. It's because I'm comparing them amongst themselves. I feel like the standard is going to be higher, so getting that S and A is going to be really tough. Yeah, I'm going to come back to Babylon 5. I feel like at least with the movies, I can compare them easier. And so Back to the Future, right? Back to the Future is a trilogy. There's no bad movie in the trilogy. The first one is a 10 out of 10. Back to the Future 2 is a great sequel, and 3 is also a great sequel. For me, Back to the Future is like a 10 and 2/8, right? Which is great. That's a great movie and 2 sequels. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing really to drag it down. Am I going to establish that Back to the Future is a C tier? C for Connor. Um. Uh. Sorry. Am I going to establish that Back to the Future is what an S tier is? It feels like it probably could go up there. I'm not really thinking of a convincing argument why it shouldn't. So I think for now I am going to put that in the S tier. But again, I'll go back and probably finesse this a little bit once I start to establish what each tier feels like. All right. Okay. The first hot take of the tier list is coming. Brace yourself, folks. I'm going to jump to Blade Runner. I'm going to jump to the next purely movie franchise. Blade Runner. I've tried. I have watched the original Blade Runner probably half a dozen times at this point in my life. And I love how it looks. And I love how it sounds. I love the production design. I love the music. I love the aesthetic of the world. I like the cast even. I like the direction. But the story is boring as fuck. And every time I watch it, I feel the same way. The love story part of it is dreadful, and the actual progression, like the ideas, like the concepts it's playing with is stuff I love. I love the whole idea of like, as an android, self-aware, is it life? What makes a life less valuable or more worthy of having life than a natural born human or whatever. Like all that stuff is like, I love those ideas. I love that in science fiction. But Blade Runner, visually great, but it is such a boring ass movie, and I've never been able to rate it really, I think, above like a 6 out of 10 because of that. It's just too dull to go above that. The technical qualities and the artistic qualities of like just the visuals and sound, wonderful. Blade Runner 2049, I do think is better. I still think it suffers a little here or there, but I do think it is better overall. But for me, it's only 2 movies, and I think it's like a 6 and a 7. Nothing horrendous, and even the movie I don't like that much has a lot of technical value. So it's definitely not an F tier. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely not an F, right? It's not trash, but it might be a D tier for me. It might be like, there's some value here, but for me, I just don't think it's that important to me. It's not important to my love of science fiction or fandom, even though a lot of things have been inspired by how Blade Runner looks that I do like. I love the look of that city. I love the cyberpunk kind of vibe that it kind of projects. But yeah, I'm going to be spicy here. Blade Runner's going in the D. Going in the D. The Blob. Oh, the Blob's an interesting one because the Blob is effectively, as far as I know, the Blob is 3 movies. It is the original '50s Blob with Steve McQueen. It is the sequel from the '70s called Beware the Blob, which is just okay. The original's a fun B movie, and then you've got the remake in the '80s, which is fantastic. I think it's the best of the 3. It's a great fun movie. But I don't know if I'd rank it that high as a franchise because I don't. they feel so disconnected. Even Beware the Blob feels like it's barely a sequel to the original. You know, it's just it's a sequel in that way where it's an entirely new cast, but it's not really following up on anything from the original. It's just we're going to use that enemy again. We're going to do something different with it, and that's what Beware the Blob is. And then the remake's the remake, so it doesn't really feel like a coherent franchise to me. So I wouldn't put it any higher than a C tier, and it's maybe getting in the D tier with Blade Runner as a franchise. Again, you know, I love the 1988 Blob, and I actually, you know, I fairly enjoy the 50s original as well. But as a series, as a franchise, it's just kind of a few random different movies, effectively. So I think for now, I'm going to pop that into the D tier. Might finesse later. We'll see. We'll see. Uh, Dune. Oh boy. So Dune is obviously a book series first. Uh, and I don't really understand the lineage of the books. Like I think there's like two or three that are like mainline, and then there's a lot of other books that came after, either by different writers or that are lesser than the first two or three. I'm not really sure the hierarchy of that. But obviously, I have seen the movies. I've seen the original film, uh, directed by David Lynch, which is not a good movie, but I kind of love it as a glorious mess. I love how that movie looks. I love the music. You know, it's kind of like it's interesting because I'd probably compare it to Blade Runner in a lot of ways, but I think it's less dull and just more messy. But like a lot of the things I like are kind of similar to Blade Runner, and I like a lot of the technical qualities. I like the aesthetic of it, all that stuff. The new movie, which obviously most people loved, Dune Part One, I I thought it was okay. I thought it was a little bit. I thought that was duller, to be honest, than the original. Uh, but obviously, Dune's a big deal in science fiction if you know the books, right? It's a big part of uh science fiction literature. Dune, it's very influential, and it's all these things. But is it important to me? I don't think it is. Because even the mess of a movie from 1984 that I kind of like, I didn't see until I was really old. You know, relatively speaking. I'm only in my early 30s here. But you know, I didn't see that until I was in my mid 20s at least. So it's not like it's some influential film for me. You know, it is objectively to a lot of people, but it's not to me. So yeah, I gotta go D tier. Oh man, the hot takes are coming. They're coming thick and fast here. Oh, I'm going to get some heat over this in the comments. Um, and it continues because Escape from New York is not that good. It's not F tier though. It's not F tier. So Escape from New York, like I think, is a great concept. We did the Ace episode on it recently, so I talked about it a lot there. But I love the concept. I love the cast. I love the director even. I, but the movie is just kind of like none of the actual events that happen once he's in the city are that exciting. And then Escape from LA, I saw a long time ago, and I just remember it being bad and stupid. So yeah, I gotta say D. Um, I won't quite say F though because there's definitely a couple of things here that are more worthy of the F tier. But it does make me think that maybe even Blob at least could bump up a slot to the C once I've established kind of what the baseline is. Okay, next movie franchise, The Fly. So we got the original, Vincent Price. That's got a couple of sequels, which I've not seen the sequels to that. But then there's the remake with Cronenberg and you know, Jeff Goldblum. Try to think of his name there. I was going to say Ian Malcolm, but you know who I meant. Which is obviously well liked and good. And then that's got a sequel, which is just kind of that's an A sequel, not much. So this is kind of it's kind of like the Blob in a way, in that they're not. It's not like a super connected franchise in that sense. I don't know if the sequels to the 50 movie are a bit more direct sequely. I mean, I think the second 80s one is. I think it's meant to be like their son that's the main character in the second one. So there's a little bit of like connective tissue. Um, oh, it's kind of weird. It does have, I think I'm going to put this in the C tier, and then I'm going to bump the Blob up to the C tier. I think we're kind of establishing what goes where here. And there's a couple of good Fly movies, there's a couple of good Blob movies that are a bit disconnected. So it's not much of a series, but I think maybe we're establishing here that that gets them to the C tier at least. And the D tier, again, for me, Blade Runner and Dune for a lot of people will be super high. But yeah, that's what it is. Godzilla. Holy shit. This is a tough one because Godzilla, you've got the original film and it's 25 sequels? 26? It's something stupid like that. It's in the upper 20s anyway, as far as the Japanese Godzilla movies goes. And then, of course, you have the 98, you know, remake. And then you have the modern franchise in the US, which is the Monster Verse or whatever we're calling it. So you've got Godzilla, you've got King of the Monsters, and then Godzilla vs Kong, right? You wouldn't really include King Kong necessarily, and with that, I've got King Kong here separately. Obviously, it's a bit shared, in the same way that Alien and Predator have shared a little bit, and so on. So I would obviously Godzilla is very important. I love the original film, and I really like a good number of the sequels. I've not seen every single one, right? I've not seen every single one, but I've seen most of them at this point. I've seen most of the 20 plus sequels. There's a few I haven't. I really want to see Godzilla Returns or Godzilla 1984 or Godzilla 1985. It's got several titles, but for some reason that one's really hard to like find. It's not got like an official release anywhere. Um, why not separate the US and Japanese movies? I did consider it, but I think ultimately, in the same reason why I wouldn't separate Star Trek movies and TV, I felt like it's all Godzilla. It's all one lineage. And I think there's good in both. Like I love the 2014 Godzilla. I think whatever faults it has, I think it gets so many things right. Um, Godzilla King of the Monsters and Godzilla vs Kong are nowhere near as good, but they are fun B movies. And a lot of the sequels are fun B movies. There are a few that are boring shit, don't get me wrong. But there's also some really good sequels from the Japanese series. Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster, is a great movie. I think Invasion of the Astro Monster is a pretty good time. There's a couple of the 90s ones. They all kind of blend together, but there's definitely a couple of those early 90s to mid 90s ones that I really enjoyed as well. But Gazelle's also very important, and I think it's a very important franchise. I think it's a very important character. It kind of formed a genre in many ways. There were monster movies before Godzilla, sure, but I think Godzilla very much is the pinnacle of the monster movie. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's definitely got the breadth of content, if nothing else. Not that that just gets you points in and of itself, but um, yeah, it's one of those things where now you get to compare different Godzilla designs, you get to compare different versions of the enemies. He's got a whole rogues gallery, like a comic book character, uh, and there's something just kind of cool about the concept. But that first film is also very important because it's an analogy for a lot of things. It's talking about the effects of nuclear fallout from a country that had two nuclear bombs go off. I say go off. We're hit by two nuclear bombs is more accurate, but you know what I mean. So Godzilla is ranking high. I think Godzilla at least hits the A tier. It's super important. Again, I might finesse between the A and the S tier as we go, but I think Godzilla does go up to the A tier at the very least. Yes, you've got 1998 Godzilla Stinker, but it's one of those things where there's so many of them now that you pick and choose, and there is definitely a lot of good in there. Even after the original classic, there's a lot of good fun sequels. So yeah, Godzilla, excellent. What we got in Highlander. Highlander. There can only be one. I don't know why I'm thickening up my Scottish accent when no one in the movie has a Scottish accent, except Sean Connery, obviously, who is a Spaniard, or he's an Egyptian pretending to be a Spaniard. One of those. So um, Highlander is a pretty decently fun B movie, the first one. But Highlander is one of those franchises where the sequels are notorious for how absolute horseshit they are. The second one, like, is this post-apocalyptic movie all of a sudden, which sounds like it could be fun, but it's just kind of nonsense. And then from there, like, some of the later sequels are just laughably bad. We might be at our first F tier franchise, and it's not really a judgment on the first movie necessarily, although the first movie's not that great that it kind of drags it up into a different tier. I think the first movie's worth watching if you like that type of movie, but as a franchise, Highlander is bad. And I've never watched the TV show, admittedly. Like, I know some people like it. Uh, I doubt. I don't know if it would really affect my judgment. But as a movie franchise, I know. I think F tier. Like, the sequels are that shitty. All right. Hunger Games. Just sticking with the more movie focused franchises just now, just because I'm finding it easier to compare them. Hunger Games is a young adult series. You know, it was made basically because Harry Potter was doing well, and then that led to Twilight. It led to Hunger Games. It led to Maze Runner and Divergent and all these other things. I'm probably forgetting a bunch of them, but Hunger Games is one that had a bit more broad appeal because it was, it had like kind of an action movie premise, right? You're in this future where it's like a battle royale with a bunch of kids. The fact that it has to be the kids is what makes it young adult, obviously, but it's the concept has got some meat on the bone. There's definitely some ideas there, and I remember, thinking the first movie was okay. The second one I thought was better, and then I thought the third and fourth were kind of weak. They were really mediocre. I think splitting the third book in two definitely hurt it. I, so I'm very lukewarm on Hunger Games. It has to be said. I think having the only one that felt like it was hitting kind of good territory was the second one, from what I remember, and it was only just hitting. It was kind of like, oh, maybe this, like, by the time it's done, I'll be into this as a trilogy or whatever. But then, of course, it just got it got the weakest it had been. The 3 and 4 felt so padded and stretched out, and 3 especially because it was the first half of the last story. It just felt rough. So, I won't quite put it into the F tier. I don't think it's like disastrously bad, but it's kind of just, yeah, it just lukewarm for me. I have to just put it in the D tier. I just don't think it's that special. It feels very much like a modern creation that is, yeah, like, it's hard not to think of Battle Royale, right? When Hunger Games comes up. And Battle Royale is also about teenagers, but it's got this edge, and it's kind of almost satirical in what it's talking about. And it's not that Hunger Games isn't talking about things, it's the poor kids all have to fight to win a nice life for their family or whatever. Like, that's definitely got some political commentary in it, absolutely. But I think my biggest critique of the Hunger Games as a franchise, and I don't know about the books, but at least the movies, for a movie series that's about a bunch of kids being forced to hunt down and kill each other, it's surprisingly toothless. And I'm not saying that I'm expecting like a hard R-rated franchise. I get that it has to be PG-13, but just the tone doesn't feel strong enough. It feels like the weight of like what they're being forced to do never feels like it's big enough. It never feels like that should be traumatizing, and it just feels like the tone of a CW show or something like that. It feels a bit too light-hearted for what it's actually doing. So I think for all those reasons, and the quality being kind of, not peaking that high and then being all over the place underneath that, I think low D tier is kind of where I'm at with that. No, Independence Day. Well, Independence Day is not very good. Like, I have some nostalgia for it. I liked it when I was a kid, but watching it again for a race a couple of years ago, I just kind of realized that it's not that good. Like, it's just, I think, at the time it had Goldblum, it had Will Smith, Bill Pullman. It's got a great cast, but it doesn't hold up that well. Other than maybe like sort of just nostalgia background noise. And the sequel is just not good. The sequel is just like they're trying so hard to continue something and turn it into a franchise when it really wasn't. Like it was in the sense that they sold a lot of toys and bed, sheets and like lunch boxes and whatever else, but I don't think it ever really. So I think as a franchise, it's an F because it's not really like it's barely a franchise. They tried and it just isn't. Um, but I feel like the first Highlander's better than Independence Day, but like all the sequels of Highlander make it worse than Independence Day as a whole. No, is that true? I don't know. Well, I don't know. F, just it's an F. Don't worry about it. Invasion of the Body Snatchers is obviously not really sequels. It's all remakes basically. You got the 50s movie, you've got 1978's movie, which most people would pick as their favorite. There's a 90s version, which I've not seen, and then there's the 2000s or maybe early 2010s. It's just called an Invasion. I think it was right at the end of the 2000s rather than the 2010s, but it was around that time. So I've seen 3 versions of this, and there's at least another one, maybe even a 5th one that I don't know of. It just keeps getting remade for whatever reason. But for that, it's probably going to the C tier. It's probably kind of in the same ballpark as The Fly and the Blob, in that 50s classic's a great 50s sci-fi movie of its time, and then the 78 one improves upon it. It makes it this darker, more paranoid-filled film, better directed film. So I think that gets it into the C tier, but it isn't really a franchise in the sense that it's just like the same movie being remade over and over again. So yeah, I'll put that in there. I think as a title, it's probably a bigger deal than the other two. So I'll put it at the front of the C tier. Judge Dredd. So only 2 movies here, but obviously it comes from a long, long history of comics. So which I can't really judge because I've only read like some of the modern IDW stuff. I've never read any of the original Judge Dredd comics. But I'm saying that to acknowledge kind of its legacy and that it's more than just the movies, but ultimately I'm kind of judging just the movies here. I actually love Judge Dredd as a concept, and I like the world of Judge Dredd, and the 2012 movie Dredd is really good. And I actually really enjoy the 95 one as well. It's not a good movie, but I enjoy it as B movie cheese. Like for me, like compare it to Independence Day. Independence Day is a movie that I think doesn't hold up now, whereas Judge Dredd, because it was never good, like it holds up exactly the same way it held up for me at the time. I don't know, it's weird. Sly's, being Stallone, and I don't know. I have a good time with it. But obviously, the 2012 movie is superior, and as it's better. I like it more as well. Obviously, it's hard hitting. It's a good gritty sci-fi action movie. Carl Urban's great in it, and I always wanted a sequel, and it's a shame we didn't get one. And they did promise we might get a TV show that could continue on from that movie, like 3 or 4 years ago, and we've heard nothing basically since, which is a shame. But Judge Dredd, it's only 2 movies. It's one genuinely good movie and then one sort of guilty pleasure movie. And that can't really get it very high. But it does get it for me. It's definitely at the top of the B tier for me, because I like Dredd more than Blade Runner. I like Dredd more than either of the Dune movies. I like Dredd more than Escape from New York. But I don't know if just having the 2 movies and only one of them's objectively more good makes me feel comfortable putting it up. But then again, I suppose it's kind of similar to The Blob in that they're kind of unrelated to adaptations of the same thing. So you could argue C tier, but I get that the reputation of that first movie is not exactly setting the world on fire. So I'll just put that as the crown of the D tier. the crown jewel. Jurassic Park. No. Jurassic Park's obviously fantastic. It was a giant step for visual effects when it came out, and it's a really well directed, well paced adventure monster movie, right? In the science fiction realm, really good stuff. Lost World, I do think, is bland. It's got some good scenes, but it's overall quite bland. And I even felt that way as a kid. I like Jurassic Park 3 more than Lost World. I think it's more of just a straight B movie. It's not great, but it's not trying to be anything else. And I think it's fun for what it is. Lost World, I think, is alright. I enjoyed it when it came out. I was, the nostalgia hit worked for me at the time. I've gotten tired of that nostalgia formula since because a lot of movies have done it. But I think the first Lost World works well enough. The second not Lost World, Jurassic World. I mean, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is a mess of a movie. The first half is pretty rough, but I kind of like how cheesy B movie the second half is. In the mansion, I kind of dig it. But admittedly, it's more of a subjective. I just kind of like this type of thing, rather than it's great. And then Dominion is the worst one of the franchise. It's terrible. It is the worst of just nostalgia. Like focus group. We have to fit in everything. We have to tick every box that might make people happy without actually doing a proper story around it to justify anything that's happening. So, very ups and downs for Jurassic Park. Nothing touches the first movie. There's a couple of enjoyable sort of cheesy B movie level things along the way, and then a couple of bland, and then one down outright terrible movie. But Jurassic Park 1 is very important as a movie on its own. So that does very much elevate it. And I think Jurassic Park as a franchise, it benefits from having that prestige that the first movie gives it, and it also has like this, it has this sort of shared idea where you say Jurassic Park and you've got an idea of the type of movie it is. You see the logo in your head instantly. And I think for people who are around my age, and it was, I think for me, literally Jurassic Park was the first movie I ever saw in the theater. I think Jurassic Park is probably our first B tier franchise. I think it rises above these other movies that are a bit more disconnected, and it is more of an actual franchise of movies. It's they bounce around which characters it's following, but it is very much all set in the same world. It's very much sequels, 2 sets of them, in fact. It feels like it's a big enough deal to me, and it feels important enough to get into the B tier. So that's where I feel with that. So we're establishing kind of things. King Kong is next. So I've not seen the 70s movie. I think that's important to mention here. But I have seen the original 30s movie. I've seen the Peter Jackson one. And I've seen, obviously, the newer entries from the Monsterverse. Skull Island and then Godzilla versus Kong. And then also relevant to that, I suppose, is Godzilla or King Kong versus Godzilla, which is the 1960s movie, which also applied to Godzilla, but I never mentioned it because there was a lot more Godzilla movies to talk about. King Kong, King Kong's very important as a movie, right? King Kong is like one of the first spectacle visual effects filled movies that were ever made, right? It was this big thing in the 30s that look at the ambition, the things they were trying. But when we did it for the Ace a couple of years ago, I appreciate what it is, and I appreciate that it inspired probably every filmmaker who's been on to make things that I care about. But I don't think it completely holds up from a character perspective and a plot perspective. It works well enough. And then the King Kong stuff is really impressive for its time, and you enjoy it for the spectacle. But I don't think the actual writing is that great in the original King Kong. And that some of that does carry forward to the later versions. I think Peter Jackson's King Kong, it's not as important, obviously, by any stretch, and it's all CG. And some of it, it's got some fun moments, but it's definitely long-winded and feels overlong. And that's the regular version. If you watch the extended cut, geez, you're waiting around for stuff for long stretches. It's a bit of a bloated mess. And Kong Skull Island's a bit of a mixed bag as well. It's this weird thing where I appreciate the legacy of King Kong, but I don't, I think, like any of his individual movies that much. I kind of, I don't think they ever rise above sort of B movie tier for me. So King Kong for me probably goes low C tier. I respect what it did for movies. I respect all the people it inspired, but I don't think like compare it to Godzilla. I don't think the biggest King Kong movies remotely compared to the best Godzilla movies, or the first Jurassic Park for that matter. So yeah, C tier. All right, Mad Max. Now I do have one missing movie here for Mad Max. I've never seen the third one, Beyond Thunderdome. It's something we'll do when we get it done on Ace. I'll do it then. I'll watch it. I think it might be a fun, cheesy time, just based on what I know of it, but I've never seen it. Uh, Mad Max 1's kind of whatever. To me, this boils down to two movies. It boils down to The Road Warrior, which is a great kind of the blueprint post apocalyptic wasteland movie, and then the 2015 sort of reboot, Mad Max Fury Road, which is excellent. Arguably even better as a movie. It's a recognizable title. Much like Godzilla established the giant monster movie in many ways, much like Aliens established a very kind of typical style of like future space travel. That's well, it's not the first kind, obviously, but different from something like Star Wars, where it's this more gritty and realistic kind of world with space travel. I think Mad Max was the blueprint and really established what the post-apocalyptic wasteland could be. Especially the desert style. Obviously, you get your more radioactive kind of like Fallout style, which is a little different. But I think that's very important and influential in that respect. There's so many knockoffs that came after it. Um, so I think Mad Max is probably a B tier franchise to me. I think I might even put it for a Jurassic Park because I think it has two great movies. And not that the other ones are bad either, but there's two great movies there. And there's going to be another one. It's continuing. We're getting the Furiosa movies, either already been shot or is currently shooting, so that's definitely happening. And that's cool. And also, it's got that nice detail with it that George Miller has been involved in all of them to some extent. I think he ended up directing half of the third one when he wasn't supposed to because it wasn't going very well. But he directed the first two. He directed Fury Road. He's directing the new one, and I think he's written most of them. So yeah, it's got that much like Child's Play has with Don Mancini being sort of the writer of the entire franchise. He has this with Mad Max. So there's kind of this. It's not as consistent, but it's kind of this like it's coming from this one passionate mind that's working on this world that he clearly loves. And I think you can feel that love, especially in Fury Road. You can definitely feel it there. So, yeah, B tier. The Matrix. Okay, this is a tough one because The Matrix is fantastic. The Matrix is one of the best science fiction films of the last 30 years, but as a franchise, that's a different story because Matrix Reloaded sucks. Matrix Revolutions sucks. Matrix Resurrections sucks. So, um, I think because of that, it's not going to rank very high in the franchise list here. It's going to. I don't think it's F tier. I think the first movie is just too good and important to go that low. Arguably, it's maybe even too good to be in the D tier, but I don't think it can go above C because the rest of it just like 2 and 3 are just bad. 4 has got a couple of interesting things in there, but it still fundamentally just feels like we wanted to do another Matrix, so it just kind of feels forced to me still. Um, it just all feels a little bit hollow, and it's weird because 2 and 3 they shouldn't feel that way because 2 and 3 came from the same creative minds and they wanted to do it, but it like one's such a tight, well written movie. It's shocking to me how much the quality just plummets after that first one. The great news is you can watch the first one and it ends in a way that's satisfying as an ending. You can just you're done, right? It ends in this moment of hope, and you can never watch another thing, and it's great. Yeah, I'm going D tier. I'll go at the front of the D tier. but the rest of them are just too bad. Like I can't. What one great movie? Like there's the like Jurassic Park. Well, none of them level up to the first one. At least those other ones I enjoy. I don't like any of the Matrix sequels. So nah, that's that. Men in Black. Men in Black's something I loved as a kid, but I've kind of I've not really liked it that much when I went back to it as an adult. I never liked Men in Black 2. And Men in Black 3, I saw that when it came out and it was yeah, it was fine. It was better than 2 at the very least. I'm very lukewarm in this though. I feel like I'm in a very similar sort of feeling to this as I am like Hunger Games or whatever. So I think that's probably where it goes for me. Is sort of around there. Um, it's just, I don't know, something about it. I like Tommy Lee Jones. I like Will Smith. I think the humor in it just doesn't click for me anymore. And I think that Escape from New York, which I've put it kind of just after, I would say, I like that world and its like concept more than Men in Black. Whereas Men in Black, it's a bit. I think just zany is just not my thing. I'm just not a zany loving guy. There's a lot of weird things I like, but zany's not really one of them. Zany and whimsy. Those are two things I'm not a big fan of. Zany and whimsy just don't appeal to me. But yeah. Pacific Rim. Only 2 movies. I almost didn't include this, but I felt, there's 2 of them. I think there's an anime or something as well that I've not seen. I'm sure there's some comic books. I quite like the first Pacific Rim, and I quite like the second one, but they're both kind of in a like, a little guilty-ish pleasure territory. Neither one I think is a great movie, but I like the the concept. I think it does enough sort of basic sort of Power Rangers esque stuff for me to get into it and enjoy it as a dumb bit of fun. But I'm never going to rate it very highly. So I think for that reason, it's probably just kind of around in that D tier, somewhere in the middle. I like them more. Yeah, I like them more. Yeah, I'll put it after Judge Dredd. There you go. That's where I'm feeling here. So simple enough. Planet of the Apes. Oh, this is such a roller coaster, this franchise, because if this was just the original 5, it would do fairly well, because the first movie is obviously a classic. It's got a lot of commentary in it, which is great. Um, Interesting concept, iconic ending, all the usual stuff. And then you've got like a weird second movie that's kind of interesting, not necessarily good, but interesting. You've got a fun third movie, and then I think 4 and 5 are a little muddy, but they do have some interesting ideas in there. So it's one of those franchises where it's like, okay, the first movie is the one you actually recommend, and then there's at least an interesting journey to go on in the sequels, even if they're not great movies. And then you add in the Tim Burton remake, and that's like trash. Like, I hate that movie. But then, like, talk about a comeback. Talk about the greatest comeback in franchise history. A comeback that no one predicted or thought could ever happen. I certainly didn't. But all of a sudden, no one. I didn't ask. I was like, who's asking for this? Who wants more Planet of the Apes? Like, it had one great movie. Like, we don't need any more. And then the trilogy comes out: Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn, and War. And Rise is better than it has any right to be. It's great. When it does choose to reference the original film, by and large, it does it in a way that feels so earned and so like hidden. And partly because it's just telling a good story anyway, that it works with it. And then Dawn is honestly the best of the franchise. It's better than the original. It is a great modern science fiction film that's saying so much. Obviously, the effects of those 3 new movies are off the wall. They're nuts. Like the level of realism in those apes and the performances that the actors doing the mocap are able to do that's still there in the eyes of the apes on the screen when you're watching. It's fantastic. It's fantastic, right? And it's a franchise that went from having one great movie, some interesting but not good necessarily sequels, and a bad remake, to having 4 great movies. Right? That is a hell of a comeback. All of a sudden, this is not just a one movie kind of recommendation. This is, at the very least, you're saying to people, watch the original and then watch the new trilogy. So I think Planet of the Apes is sneaking into that A tier. I think it's just about sneaking in. So yeah, I gotta do it. I gotta do it. Predator. So I love Predator. I even love Predator 2. Not everyone agrees on that. Sometimes it's hard to hear Predator 2 slander when people treat it like it's this awful sequel, and I just simply don't think it is. I disagree with that. Predators, though, I think is very bland. The Predator is like a train wreck. But then Prey is really good. I was so happy that we got a good Predator sequel last year. It delighted me. I I'd been wanting it for so long, and it's like this is what you can do with this franchise. You can do such a simple movie like this, and just like different types of characters who interact with the Predator, and it can work. But the Predator's got a great design. The different settings for the different movies work really well, particularly for 1, 2, and Prey, because those are the good ones, in my opinion. I mean, the original is the best one. It's the best directed. It's so tight in every possible way, and takes what should be a silly B movie concept and treats it like it's pristine cinema. It's shot so well. It's edited so well. The characters are pretty well established for not having tons of like strong arcs between them. It's a good ensemble cast. It's it's wonderful. The music's iconic. Like Stan Winston's designs are wonderful. So really important, really influential. It's one of those franchises that started in the 80s that is just still so respected, and anyone who's grown up with them or are attached to Predator. Um, but I think it is fair to say that it doesn't quite have the same, prestige or indeed kind of, like the obvious one to compare it to is Aliens, right? And I think Aliens, for a long time, it's a little bit different now because Predator's got a good new movie and Aliens not had a good movie in a long time. But there was a time growing up where there was 4 Alien movies and 2 Predator movies, and it felt like Aliens just inherently won because it had 2 tens. And Predator, I can't quite rate it that high, even though I love Predator. And it's gotten better with age. I think the older I've gotten, the more I've respected Predator. When you think it might go the other way, because it's like you may think, it's a dumb machismo movie with a bunch of muscle men fighting an alien monster. But no, it's actually gotten better with age. The filmmaking's that strong. So I'm tempted to. I think for me right now, Predator probably slots in the upper B tier. I think that's where it fits for me right now. I think it is a rung down from Aliens because it doesn't feel like it has quite the same impact or prestige as those first 2 Alien movies. Um, but yeah, I think it's I think the same tier as Jurassic Park, but slightly higher in its ranking is where it feels right just now. But hey, if they give me another good Predator movie, it could rise, baby. It could rise. So Predator, the uppest of upper B tier, which is kind of perfect for it because it's a B movie that is like treated and like made like it is an A movie, or it feels that way anyway when you're watching it. It's not this silly goofy thing that it could be. All right, Riddick. So that's basically a trilogy. Obviously, there's video games, and I'm sure there's comics and stuff. But you're looking at Pitch Black, which is a fun movie from the year 2000, with a gimmick. It's obviously inspired by Aliens, but it's got a kind of a fun gimmick with a character who can see in the dark and these aliens that look him out when there's no sunlight. Um, Then you've got Chronicles of Riddick, which I was looking forward to at the time because I like Pitch Black, but it was kind of like a weird attempt to turn it into more of a space opera, and it didn't. Like some of the stuff they added felt a little bit too fantasy. The enemy army felt a little too out of Star Wars or something like that, and it didn't feel right for Riddick. Whereas Riddick felt like it belonged in something closer to an alien universe. The whole army that was like, I don't know. It felt a little. It didn't really quite feel like it fit the direction that it should go in. But then you've got the third movie, Riddick, which was definitely trying to be more like Pitch Black. and it was better. It wasn't as good as Pitch Black, but it was another planet with a gimmick. It had the horror, it had the stuff. The characters weren't quite as good, other than Riddick himself, but it was a fun B movie. So it's an interesting kind of set of movies now at this point to look at and compare with these others. I think it's like a fun movie. The third movie is not quite as good, but still pretty fun. I enjoyed it. And then kind of a misfire, but an interesting misfire of a middle movie where they tried to turn it into this huge franchise thing, and it never quite took. But kind of interesting to look at and analyze, and it's right. So, I I think I'm like hitting the C tier with this. Like, it's more of a franchise than the ones that are in the C tier, but I think it kind of belongs there because I think it's more successful and consistent, I guess, than I think some of those ones in the D tier are. But I don't think it's good enough to be in the B tier. Like what we've established is in that B tier. There's no way Riddick's making it there. But I think it goes into the C tier. I think there's enough stuff to enjoy with the first and third movie, especially. And even this, like I say, the second movie is at least interesting and what they try to do with it. So yeah, RoboCop. Obviously, it's an excellent first movie, classic, great designs, good story, good satire, phenomenal music. RoboCop 2 is enjoyable. It's kind of a weird movie because it's got a really weird structure, but despite that, it's actually quite enjoyable for just being an expansion of what RoboCop is. And then the third movie is obviously a lot goofier, but I kind of enjoy it in a bad way to an extent. The remake is just kind of bland and soulless. Like I wouldn't really say much for that, but yeah, I guess this is kind of falling somewhere in in the same way that some of these movies in the D tier have one great movie and then nothing other good, kind of. RoboCop, I would say, has an enjoyable enough second movie that it does probably rank above everything in the D tier. And yeah, maybe some of the C tier as well. I think RoboCop is upper C tier. I think it doesn't quite get to the B tier because I don't think there's enough good. Although I mean, it is kind of close to Jurassic Park, and you've got the great movie and then a fun sort of B movie. But I think Jurassic Park just has more of a lineage that feels more established, I guess, than RoboCop, and that's just a feeling. I can't really explain that. It just feels that way. Obviously, there was a TV show that lasted one season and a few TV movies, which I think I saw the TV movies once when I was younger. But yeah, I think upper C tier makes sense for RoboCop to me. I think if it ever comes back and has another great movie, then it's the sort of thing that it could comfortably like jump up to that B tier, but it's not quite there yet. But yeah, okay. Species. Okay, this is not high art. Species is the first movie is a B movie. It's that late night cable kind of movie. It's a bit sexy. It's copying a lot of H.R. Giger worked on it, so it's got a lot of alien-esque. I can't say copy, I suppose, because it's him, but you know what I mean. And then 2 is watchable. There's some fun bad moments and some kind of they're really doing this. I didn't have a bad time watching it, I have to say. I think it's probably in the D tier. I've not seen the third or fourth yet, admittedly, so I've only seen half of it, which maybe feels like I shouldn't place it. I feel pretty confident though. I think it's better than Highlanders as a franchise, but probably not like super like high up. I'll put it above Hunger Games. I'll put it above Hunger. I feel quite confident about that. But it can't really go much higher. It's the ceiling for Species' quality isn't that high. It's just I think for what it is, it works well enough. So yeah. Star Trek. Okay, so this is kind of the super franchise, right? This is lots of movies, but also a lot of TV shows, and I've not seen all of them yet, but I have seen a good amount of them at this point. So in the original series, I'm almost done with Next Gen. I'm halfway through season 1 of Deep Space Nine. I've seen all of Discovery so far. I've seen all of Picard, barring the last episode because it's not aired yet. Uh, Strange New Worlds, season 1 of that. Yeah, so tons of Trek at this point. I've seen all the movies. Star Trek's super important, obviously. Uh, the original series, it predates Star Wars even. This early example of space travel, and it tackles moral subjects, and it has iconic, not just characters, but like just species. Like, it has the Vulcans and the Klingons and all these things. There's like a whole universe that's formed and been added to over the years. And obviously with anything this expansive, there's good and there's bad. And typically the earlier stuff's better and the newer stuff's not as good. Typically. Not always, there's exceptions on both sides, but it's typically how it is. But obviously, at this point, there's so much of it that there's enough good stuff to really sink into. Next Gen, when it's at its best, is doing excellent stuff. Original series, both movies and the TV show, like the characters are so likable. That main trio of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy is just this delightful, like triple bromance of a set of characters. It's really good stuff, and the obviously the impact of Star Trek and like how important it is to everything is important. So Star Trek has to be at least the A tier. There's no debating that it's the A tier, at least. And to be honest, it's like so up there that there's a really good argument for it being in the S tier. Even on a personal level, with like how like much I like what I've seen of it and what it does well when it's doing its thing. So yeah, yeah, it feels right. It feels right. Now Star Wars, Star Wars is this is going to get me in trouble because I like the original trilogy, but I didn't need another single Star Wars thing ever after that. The prequels suck. Just they're terrible. The like Attack of the Clones is one of the most boring wastes of time I have ever had in my life. The sequel trilogy, Force Awakens was an alright watch when it came out. But again, that nostalgia sequel kind of formula that it kind of kicked off is dated since. I think Last Jedi is a bit messy. I appreciate that it is trying to do something different, but it is a kind of a messy film to me. Rise of Skywalker is just trash. It is just focus group. Let's tick a bunch of boxes to adhere to an angry fan base. Shit, that's what it is. Simply not good. I don't like Rogue One. I didn't like Rogue One was very good. I haven't seen Solo. I've tried some of the TV shows, and I don't care enough about the Star Wars as a world to want more of it. Like I was fine with the original trilogy. The story ended. It was done, and it's not perfect. I think I think Return of the Jedi has some faults. It's not perfect. I definitely wish that felt like a bigger climax, but other than that, like I don't really need anything else from Star Wars. Obviously, it's very influential. I cannot deny that. But ultimately, I'm going to weigh this more to how I feel about the franchises than I objectively sort of studying them from a distance. So, for me, it's a good trilogy. It's a good trilogy, but I care about Predator more, so it's going in the B tier after Predator. I mean, I do like Jurassic Park more than any individual Star Wars movie, to be fair, but like Star Wars. Then again, I do think the Dagobah stuff in Empire is kind of dull. No, out of respect, I'll keep it where it is, but that's as far as it's going for me. Like some people, Star Wars is the be all end all. I really can't put it any higher than that for me. So that's where it's going. Starship Troopers. So the first movie I respect well enough, but I don't really enjoy it that much. The sequels are just bad direct-to-video movies. They're not good. Uh, Basically, I'm thinking, is this either a low D tier or is it in the F tier? And honestly, given that I've got Highlander in the F tier, I feel like this has to go in the F tier. Because I think I enjoy Highlander more than I enjoy Starship Troopers. And it's just got direct-to-video crappy sequels after that. So yeah, as a franchise, and that's not really a judgment on the first movie so much as it's a judgment on what it is, a series of films. That has to be where it goes. The Terminator. Okay, this is tough because the Terminator is very important to me, and so is Terminator 2. But obviously, everything after that sucks for the most part, right? The Dark Fate's got a couple of, it's watchable. It's definitely the best of the sequels after T2. The TV show is, some people like Sarah Connor Chronicles. I didn't really. I watched the first season. I did not like it. I just didn't. Uh, I thought Travelers, which I'm realizing I haven't put on here as an option to rank, but Travelers I thought was a better Terminator-esque show about coming from the future to save the past. No robots in that, but I like that way more than Sarah Connor Chronicles. Cindy's telling me to put it in the F tier, which I get because some of those sequels, like Terminator Genesis, is it's. But yeah, take out the first two and it's an F. I agree with that. If it's just Terminator 3 to Terminator Dark Fate, yeah, it's an F tier. But those first two movies are really important. And I mean, if I gave RoboCop a C for the first and second movie, Terminator has to at least go above that. That it can't be lower than a C tier. Terminator 1 and 2 just make it impossible. I think it goes in the B tier. I think it does. I think 1 and 2 are just so damn important and good. I think it can go below the B tier. Like I can't put it below Jurassic Park. I think when I compare it to Jurassic Park and why I gave Jurassic Park its placement, it's got worse sequels than Jurassic Park does. Don't get me wrong, it does, but I mean, to me, Terminator 1 and 2 are more important to me than any Star Wars movie. And Star Wars has a lot of shit after that first trilogy. I think Terminator before Prey, I think Terminator would have easily placed right in front of Predator. I think because Prey exists, it's a little tougher to compare them because I think Terminator is better than Predator, and Terminator 2. Terminator 2 is not better than. I think I used to would have said Terminator 2 is better than Predator. I think I've respected Predator more enough that I don't think I'd say that anymore. So yeah, I think above Star Wars for me. Because despite how bad everything after 2 is, I can say the same about Star Wars after Jedi. For me, like most of it's shit. Some of it's some of the worst big budget movies I've ever seen. Because if you do the same logic, if you say Star Wars but take out the original trilogy, that is going straight into the F tier. By that logic, just the prequels and the sequel trilogy. Oh no. So no, I think we've reasoned this out. That's where Terminator goes. But obviously, this is a complex thing to compare because you've got two absolute bona fide classics, and then you've got Salvation. I want Salvation from that movie. All right, transfers. All right, so this is just kind of no one else is going to have seen Trancers probably, whoever like tries to do this one, but I've seen them all. It felt weird not to include it. So it's a fun couple of B movies. The first three, I would say, to varying degrees, and then four, five, and six are trash. But you know, I think it has more consistency than Highlander or anything like that. So I think it gets the D tier. I'd yeah, I'd love the D tier. I'm okay with that. I can't get enough of the D. Very good. There's multiple meanings to that sentence, and I'm reading them all, Mike. I can feel them all. All right. So that's where Transfers is going. There's a big D though, isn't it? Look at that big D. It's stretching out there for everyone else. Transformers. Now I have seen the animated movie from the 80s, but let's be honest, like this is going to way more to the modern movies. You've got the five Michael Bay movies, which I've not seen the last one. I've not seen the fifth one, but I've seen the four, and I've seen Bumblebee. So, and obviously you've got the cartoon as well, which is important to a lot of people. I saw a little bit of it growing up, but not that much. And yes, I believe that was a Tara reference. If you've watched the newest Picard review, you'll. I had a little bit of fun with the editing based on something that Tara said. Um, I mean, I don't know. This is tough because obviously the Transformers movies, directed by Michael Bay specifically. Bumblebee's better, but and the first one's got its moments. Like I like the music in the franchise at least, but obviously these movies are known for bad jokes, bloated plot lines, flat out kind of racist characters, and just dumb lowest common denominator like 12-year-old boy humor. Right? That's what you're getting out of a lot of Transformers. And then on top of that, you're getting like overly complex CG for the Transformer characters, so it's hard to actually watch the action sequences. So I can't, like it's rating low, but this almost feels bad to say, but I'm almost wondering if it's got enough money in it that it's just better than the F tier because at least it has like production value and it's got Peter Cullen doing the voice of Optimus Prime. There's like little things to like here or there in it. It's just tough because I think there's an absolute argument that should just go straight into the F tier, and I get it. I absolutely get it. But part of me is also thinking that I would still get more out of watching them than like something bland like the Hunger Games, which I've got at the low end of the D tier. But do I really want to make Transformers the tip of the D? Oh, I'm such maybe I do like 12-year-old humor because I'm laughing at that. The difference is that was not a written line in a script for a major motion picture. That's the important part. That was an off the cuff stupid joke. Um, okay, I think it goes into the F tier. I think I'm feeling F tier just now. Obviously, more sequels that are better might lift it out of there as time goes on. But it's definitely better than the other F tier franchises just because it has more in it. And at least you can feel passionate about hating it at least. It's not much to go on, but it's something. It's something. All right, we'll go there. We'll go there. I expect that to be so hard. Okay, Tremors. This very much falls into the first movie is a great B movie. The second one's still pretty watchable, and then it just starts to kind of plummet into direct to video shit. But first movie's a lot of fun. Second movie's still fairly fun. I think that kind of puts it into sort of mid D tier kind of levels. Uh, Probably above Trancers, above Dune for me, above Blade Runner. Yeah, above Pacific Rim. I'll probably put it a bit there. You're just glad I didn't put Transformers in the same tier as the Matrix. Again, that would not be a comparison between the first Matrix and any of the Transformers movies. The first Matrix obviously is leagues better than any of the Transformers movies. But yes, but there's a fair argument. It's a fair argument. There's at least one great movie in there. So yeah, on that logic, yes, I should probably put it in. Yeah, I'm almost wondering if I should have I should have had an E tier as well, just to separate, like, because I feel like maybe like Escape from New York to Hunger Games could go into an E tier between the D and the F just to separate them more. In fact, can I just quickly add that in? Add row above. Hey. What color is that? It's the same as F. Hold on. We'll make that. There we go. Look at that. Just like that, made a whole new tier. And suddenly the D tier is not so big. All right. I think that. Yeah, I think that. Yeah. And now I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking of Transformers 4 and how much I hated it. I'm quite happy it's in the F tier now that I'm thinking about it. Okay. Okay. We are just about to do the sequels to Transformers on the Ace, and I feel like if you ask me in about a month or two's time, I probably would have been even more confident and quick to put it in the F tier. But because my memory of the sequels is a bit faded, it's probably helping it a little bit. Okay, Tron. We just did Tron on Ace. In fact, it'll be up for patrons tomorrow at the time of recording. By the time this goes out, it'll probably be public for everyone. Um, so I've not seen the second. Actually, you know what? Tron I can't do. I've not seen the second one. I can't rank it just based on the first movie. So sorry, that's what I missed earlier when I was ruling stuff out. So I'll leave that for now because I've not seen Tron Legacy. Okay. Universal Soldiers, the last sort of more movie focused franchise. Good B movie, and then yeah, not a lot of good sequels. I would say. So it's either D or E, basically. Where am I putting it? I probably like the first movie more than I like anything in the D tier. Actually, I like Species more than Men in Black. Why is that after that? Yeah, probably like it more than Escape from New York. Actually, but yeah, put Species up front. Universal Soldier, I like. The first movie is a B movie, and the sequels are mostly pretty crud. I've seen the two TV movies for 2 and 3. I've seen The Return. I haven't seen the newer two movies that he did again with Dolph Lundgren, like Reckoning and Day of Judgment. I want to say they're called. So I'm not really counting those in this, but I will put it kind of, yeah, sort of around the Trancers level. I think that's fair. Okay, so now things are getting tough. Oh, I suppose Westworld's also a movie. Uh, that's got a movie originally. It's got a sequel even that I've not seen, but it's also got a TV show which I've seen most of. I didn't watch the final season because it got it was getting worse as it went. Basically, season 3 was pretty rough. I tried the first episode of season 4, and I just felt like it was doing the same dance again. I didn't want to watch it, so that's not a good start for it. Obviously, Westworld obviously is influential. You know, it has a hand in influencing Terminator. It has a hand in obviously Not an influence because it's the same author of the books, but like there's a lot of similarities with Jurassic Park. If you stop and compare them, you just swap out robots for dinosaurs, and you've got kind of the same thing. So season one of Westworld was good. I think two was a bit more mixed, but still had some good stuff in it. Three had its moments, but it was really bad by the end. I really hated how three ended. And the first movie is a nice time capsule, but it's not like great. Like I don't like it as much as other classic sci-fi movies by any means. So I think it's probably getting the D tier for me. It's kind of like a mixture of respect and a mixture of like good seasons of the TV show. It probably gets it above, maybe above Tremors, just because of the good seasons of the TV show. Yeah. So I'm glad we made the E tier because that D tier is starting to fill out again awkwardly. All right. So we have nothing but mainly TV shows left. I mean, okay, technically a couple of these have one movie, but they're predominantly TV shows now. So what are the easiest ones to do? What are the ones that stick out as being like I just know where to... Oh no, Cloverfield. Hold on. I've missed over. I skipped Cloverfield. 10 Cloverfield Lane is great. Cloverfield I don't think holds up. It's just a generic found footage movie, to be honest, with all the usual tropes. And then the third one wasn't very good. So yeah, it kind of falls into that one good movie kind of thing, which maybe puts it above. I think there's more consistency in Pacific Rim for me. I'll put it above Trancers. I think that's kind of where it goes. Yeah. And you're right, Avatar I've kind of forgotten about. Um, so we're doing science fiction franchises, Elsa. We've got a mixture of sci-fi movies and TV franchises. So Avatar, I think Avatar goes in the C tier. I think that's what I said at the start, and I feel like now that I'm looking at what this is now, I think it's in the C tier just now, with the possibility of rising as more entries come out. I think right now it's kind of the top of the C tier because it's not got a bad movie. So I think Avatar goes in the C tier. So sometimes I just have to go with my gut feeling. Like sometimes I can explain it, I can whittle it down, but sometimes I can't. Sometimes it is just a gut feeling. So what do we have here, TV wise? We have what's an easy one to do? Twilight Zone is a classic. Twilight Zone is absurdly influential. So many other things were inspired by episodes of Twilight Zone. Obviously, there's bad episodes of it, like any anthology series, but it is good. It's full of good classic material. The only debate in my head really is: do I feel like it goes straight into the S tier, or do I put it in the A tier? Because if I'm weighing up like how important it is to me, it's something that I've not really delved into until later, until these days, right? It's been the last few years that I've been watching it for the first time, but the influence is undeniable, and the quality of a lot of the good episodes is also undeniable. So, I think for my gut right now is to put it in the A tier after Aliens, but again, I might finesse this as we go, and we're doing other TV shows and mixing them in. Yeah. Am I counting the reboots? I guess in my head, I'm not really counting the reboots because I've only seen the new one. I've not seen the 80s show. So I'm really just considering the classic series. Admittedly, yeah, the new show kind of drags it down a little bit. But it's kind of like Star Trek. I feel like it doesn't matter almost if there's new shows that drag it down because there's so much of the good stuff anyway. But yeah, I'm going to let a cat out. Hold on. Bad time in Firefly. Finally, folks on YouTube have to suffer a cat interruption. Um, it's really hard mixing in these TV shows. Comparing movie franchises to TV franchises is hard. It's really difficult. Okay. Okay, I'll do Doctor Who because I'm not a big Doctor Who fan. Like I've seen a lot of the modern Doctor Who. I kind of gave up a couple of years ago. Like I spent like a year catching up, having already given up ages ago, so that me and Connor could review it. And we reviewed one season of it, and I'm like, I just don't want to do this. Like it's got its moments. Don't get me wrong, and it like I definitely enjoyed some of the David Tennant era, and bits and pieces of some of the other stuff that came after. But I'm not a big Doctor Who guy. I'm sorry, Sid. So I think Doctor Who for me, like obviously it's got a history, it's got a lot, there's a lot of it, and it's got a lot of variety. It's got its place in history, but I don't really care for it that much myself. So I think I'll put it in the D tier, but there's definitely been enough individual good episodes that I've seen that I would probably put it somewhere in the middle. Yeah, I'll just put it there. It is tough. It is tough to sort of think about it. Like I definitely, if I'm compared to the other TV show that's nearby, like Westworld season one, I like more than Doctor Who easily. But obviously, it's a really hard thing to compare. Um, Babylon 5. I haven't quite finished it yet. I've got a few episodes of season 5 left, but I've seen most of the show. I've seen most of the main story play out. And I love Babylon 5. I love the world. I love the politics of the world and the various races and how they interact. The mythology of the show is really cool, and I like it. And I like a lot of the cast and all these other things. So Babylon 5, like I think what's tough about this is that when you've got a TV show, and in this case one that's 5 seasons, and most of it's great, right? The season 5 has been a bit rockier, admittedly, but even if you've got 4 great seasons, it's so tough to compare that to a franchise that's got like 2 or 3 good movies and a couple of bad movies, because in terms of hours, like you spent way more good hours in a good TV show than a good movie franchise, right? So it's really hard to compare those things. But Babylon 5 is a great show. So with great characters, and like I'm going to remember that story for a long time. I'll want to rewatch it at some point. And rewatching a TV show is much harder, obviously, than a movie franchise because it's a lot longer. So I think Babylon 5. I think it has to go at the B tier. And I think as a whole, I think it's more important than probably like a franchise of the whole of Jurassic Park and Mad Max. I like it more than Star Wars. That's going to get some flack, but I can't really necessarily put it above Terminator and Predator. I have to go with gut feelings here, and I think that's where I'm going. Take it, Star Wars. I think that's where I feel. My personal attachment to the Terminator and to Predator still outweighs Babylon 5, but Babylon 5 is a pretty special show that I've really enjoyed going through. Um, Battlestar Galactica. I loved watching this when it came out, and it was very much my first science fiction TV show of its kind that I really get into. A space show. I watched it before I watched Star Trek. Long time before Babylon 5, and I think it's really good. And I think I got a great premise. And this is Obviously, you can include the original show in here too. I'm specifically thinking of the 2000s show, uh, by Ronald D. Moore. So, um, I do think that I would rank Babylon 5 above it. I do think it's a more full fledged show. I do think seasons 1 and 2 of Battlestar Galactica are excellent. And then 3 and 4 I still enjoy, and it still does some great stuff, but it doesn't quite live up to those first two seasons as much. It's really tough. Um, I think this is something I was kind of expecting. I think it's going to be hard for a lot of these TV season or TV shows to go below the B tier. It feels wrong putting it below the B tier because I don't really think it belongs going below the B tier. But it's probably at the end of the B tier because I think Jurassic Park probably means more to me than Battlestar Galactica does. But it is tough. These are tough to compare. They really are. Black Mirror is tough because obviously it's an anthology show like Twilight Zone, but isn't as obviously iconic or as long running. Uh, its best episodes are phenomenal, but there's probably more just okay episodes than great episodes at this point because it's. I think season 3 has its two best episodes. Season 1 and 2 have a nice mix of good and bad. I think season 4 is not as good as 3. It has one or two pretty good episodes, but they kind of feel like they're lesser versions of the great episodes from season 3. And 5 has, I'd say, one great episode. So it kind of became a mixed bag the more it went on. But the good stuff is really good, for sure. Um, I think I might even go C tier in this. I think I think there's just enough mediocre episodes that I can't put it into the B tier. And it's not to diminish because I think Shut Up and Dance and San Junipero are two of the best science fiction TV episodes I've ever watched. But the quality's all over the place. And I don't necessarily always agree with the opinions on Black Mirror. Like, there's an episode, the Haley Atwell episode in season 2, I didn't think was that good. But people seem to love that episode. So, it's very um subjective in that sense. But I think because seasons 4 and 5 kind of just further murkied the quality average, I think it is a C tier on this franchise tier list. Um, it definitely goes above Riddick and King Kong for me, and probably still Blob and the Fly, even though they've got some really great movies. I'll put it below RoboCop. I think RoboCop is just the first RoboCop's so important to me that I don't think I can put Black Mirror above it. Okay. I'm sorry, Elsa. Hunger Games is it's kind of lame. It's almost onto something good, but it's kind of lame. Uh, Dark, time travel TV show from Netflix. Dark is excellent. It's definitely more about the science fiction mechanics than it is about like character storytelling. It's got it's not terrible at that, but it's definitely leans more into the nitty gritty of the mechanics and how it works and like the puzzle of how it all fits together and all that stuff, which is good. Um, really good, in fact. Um, oh god, comparing. I know I keep saying it, but comparing movie franchises and TV franchises is really hard. Oh, it's tough. Um, I'm going to put Dark because there's only 3 seasons as well. Comparatively to versus the other TV shows. Not that Like Firefly is going to rank highly for me, so it's not like the length of the show matters that much. You recommend C tier, but you haven't watched it. I mean, I think it goes above Black Mirror. Like RoboCop's a tough one to overcome. Like it feels like there's a barrier there, depending on how much I care about the show to put it above that. Um, but Dark is really good, but it feels less of a iconic franchise, I suppose. Like it just doesn't feel as franchisey to me, I guess. So yeah, maybe C tiers. Yeah, I'll put it just above Black Mirror. I'll take an easy win there. The Expanse is fantastic. The Expanse is a show that like it's based on a book series. It's a space opera of sorts, but it's one that has really good mythology. It very much like it doesn't have alien species in it the same way that Babylon 5 does, but in a lot of ways, I would recommend it to people who like Babylon 5 because it is very much a similar style of show in terms of how it deals with its politics and it's the factions of the Earth and the Martians and the Belters and how they're all vying for place and stuff. But some good science fictiony stuff as well. So great characters, and I thought it was one of those shows that like season one's good, and I love being in that world. I love the design, and the effects are really good for a TV show. But by the time you get to like season three, it really felt like it came together, and I was really starting to love the dynamics in the world. Some people didn't like season five that much. I love season five. I think the character like stories and drama in season five is phenomenal. And I think the show ends like all the characters' journeys in a really satisfying way. It has some of the best sci-fi action on a TV show. I used to say that about Battlestar Galactica. I think The Expanse one ups it in all those ways. Um, the Expanse might be inching into the A tier here. And I've never really thought about if I like Expanse or Babylon 5 more, but I think if I'm being forced to compare them, I think Expanse might inch upwards a little bit. Uh, the expand episode four is where it connected for you. Episode four is where it gets good to begin with. I would agree. Yeah, I think that's when you first get your first impressive action scene, and the space action in Expanse is so unique, and they try to be as grounded with it as possible. They seem to try and base it as much like science as they can, and it actually makes it fun because having rules that you have to work around is what makes action good. If people can just do anything whenever they want, it's just magic and nothing means anything. There has to be jeopardy. There has to be obstacles and rules to adhere to. It makes it good. My gut is saying Expanse goes here in the A tier. Expanse is a very serialized show. I would not recommend starting it anywhere other than the start. um, just get to episode four and see if you're starting to feel it a bit more. There's a lot of world building. There's a lot of things to understand about the world. Firefly. I love Firefly. This is no secret. Also, I'm noticing this recording is starting to get close to eclipsing the horror tier list, even though there's less things on it. I guess I'm just more opinion. I think this one's harder. I legitimately think this one's harder than the horror franchise list. I think with horror, I'm a lot more confident to just say, this is shit. Put it down there. I think with these, there's a lot more arguing in my head back and forth. So Firefly, I love Firefly the season, and I love Serenity. Serenity is one of the most personally kind of great experiences I've ever had seeing a movie. Like I cared so much. It was like such a miracle getting that movie after the show I cared about so much was cancelled. I fell in love with those characters. Like they're all just so lovable. It Firefly is a special show filled with the world building, filled with its own sort of space opera style, with its own factions, and there's no aliens, but like all that stuff. It's hilarious and mixes that humor with its drama so well. It has stakes. Um, Firefly is so good. Um, I'm just debating how high I go with this because it's going high. It's just a matter. It has a lot of heart. That is a good way. It has so much heart. It does. It really does. Um. Okay. I think I'm bumping Aliens up to the S tier. My gut's telling me to do that, and I think possibly upsetting people. I think Firefly is also going in the S tier. It just means that much to me. I cry like a baby watching Serenity because I care so much about those characters. I just love it so much, so much. Yep, there we go. That's where that's going. Fringe is excellent. Fringe is one of the most satisfying endings that I have ever had of a TV show, and it's not obviously like any network show. It's got a few bumpy patches, but Fringe is a show that really finds its foot in season two. Seasons 2 and 3 are fantastic, and then like there's good stuff and bad stuff in 4 and 5, but the last like run of like 4 episodes, maybe 5 episodes at the end of season 5 are exceptional. I love how it plays with its science fiction rules, the alternate realities, and all the different things that it sets up. The Walter and Peter sort of father son dynamic is like one of the best of its kind that I really like. Um, so yeah, like honestly, as a complete experience, like honestly, Fringe is going to the A tier, probably above the Apes. Yeah, I'm putting for and it's Joshua Jackson. Don't start with this weird Joshua Jackson thing you've got with me. Stop it. Um, it does have Lance Reddick, who just passed away, of course, and he's a great supporting character in that. Uh, yep, there you go. That's Fringe. Handmaid's Tale is next, and this one's going to upset me to do because Handmaid's Tale season 1 is so excellent. It's so good, and it kept going, and it wasn't bad. Season 2's got a lot of great things in it, and I still liked a lot of it. But it kind of was scared to like advance the story or change the status quo enough. Season 3, it was like, okay, maybe we're inching towards some good stuff, and there was some good stuff in season 3, but it still felt like it was scared to do anything like super different by the end, I think. And I saw the first like 5 or 6 episodes of season 4, and I just didn't want to watch it anymore. It just felt like too much. Like what used to be so effective just felt like a trope by the time we got to season 4, and it's such a shame. It's ending, I think, with season 6 that's upcoming, and I don't want to watch the rest of it, and that's such a shame because that first season is such a good, excellently directed, hard hitting look at a dystopia, a horrible future that we should avoid at all costs, that is relevant in today's politics, but goddamn, it kept going, and they were just too scared to change enough, to advance the story enough. So sadly, I think as a franchise, and I've also seen the movie as well. I haven't read the book, but I've seen the movie as well. But I'm mostly just judging the TV show here. I think I can't go super high with it. I think it gets above like E tier for sure. It's probably in the D tier. It's probably similar to like The Matrix, where the first movie's excellent and then it gets bad. Like it's probably similar in my head to that kind of status, or Westworld, which has a great first season and a better season two. Yeah, I think honestly next to Westworld feels right. I think Westworld and Handmaid's Tale are very comparable in quality. They feel very similar to me. Lost. I love Lost. Lost was a exciting show to watch. It's very pulpy. It's got a lot of science fiction elements. It's got like a lot of great a few bad characters, but a lot of great characters. I love solving the mystery of Lost. I loved it leaning more into its science fiction side as it went on. It's not without a few missteps here or there, of course. There's a couple of things I would have loved to expand on, but the experience of going through Lost was fantastic. Um, but what's so funny is that I remember when Fringe started, and Fringe was also J.J. Abrams, created. I remember thinking, "Oh, this Fringe show seems pretty good, but obviously it's not as good as Lost." By the time both finished, I thought Fringe was the better show, and that's actually not a dig at Lost. That is just a testament to how great I thought Fringe was by the end. Um, but Lost is more pulpy, and I think I don't think I can put it above something like Babylon 5. I think it is not quite as meaty as a story and as a set of characters as that. So I think it has to go below Babylon 5. But Lost does mean more to me in Star Wars, so it's actually quite easy for me to slot it in here. Like it's actually such an easy fit there in the B tier. It's like not quite as great as Babylon 5 in terms of just overall story arcs and like what it's saying and having like a purpose. But Lost means more to me as an experience than Star Wars ever has. So I think that's where I go with that. I'm going to leave Power Rangers for now because it's kind of a weird one. I'll come back to it. Red Dwarf is a show that a lot of the Americans who watch my content probably won't know. It's a UK comedy series that's also science fiction. It's set on a spaceship that it's kind of a similar concept to Futurama actually, where the main character was kind of frozen for doing bad stuff on this spaceship, and then everyone on the ship dies, and he wakes up in the far future when he's the only one there, and the only thing he has with him is a hologram of his old roommate, and it's them. And there's one other character who is basically a humanoid life form that's evolved from his old cat who was alive when he was alive. So it's a guy who's very cat like. So obviously that's a bit silly, but it's a really funny show, but it's also a show that does use a lot of sci-fi concepts. Like there's episodes where they run into like alternate versions of themselves from a different universe. There's episodes where it deals with time travel and time loops. Uh, it's a really funny show that is set on this spaceship, and occasionally they'll go to like a moon or something. It's obviously quite low budget for what it is. It's the late '80s, early '90s in terms of its production values, but it's very good. And they've actually done some modern seasons of it. Like they did like a mini series in like the 2000s, and they came back for like a season. Like they counted that as season 9 after, like in hindsight. It wasn't at the time, but it was kind of counted as that as in hindsight. And then they did like a season 10 and 11, I think, maybe a 12. I haven't seen those newer seasons, so I don't know if those are like bad or they live up to the old stuff. But the original 8 seasons, which is what it was for a long time, I've watched all of, and I watched the miniseries that came after. Um, and it's very good. I know some people really don't like a couple of the later seasons. I remember still kind of liking them, even though they were goofier. Um, but yeah, like there's a lot of good gags from it. So it's very different than a lot of the things that I've got here. It's not a serious science fiction, but it's very consistent. I remember, and I remember just enjoying it, playing with the sci-fi concepts. I guess in a lot of ways for me this was my Futurama. It's live action, it's not a cartoon, but like in many ways it kind of fills that space. So for me it's probably It's at least in the C tier, and it's probably above some of the shows in the C tier. I just don't know if it quite makes B tier. I don't know if I quite love it that much. So I think I'm going to put it. I'll put it in between Dark and Black Mirror. I think that's where it fits for me. I'm going to put that there. Stranger Things. Stranger Things. It's interesting to do this because obviously Stranger Things hasn't finished yet, and I realized that I've probably been on that E flashing for ages. Uh, Stranger Things, I love Stranger Things. When it came out the first season, it felt like it was made just for me. You know, it's harkening back to the Goonies and Explorers with its like young kids on bikes in the 80s kind of vibe, and it's got like the aliens influence of the monster, and even more so in season two. It's got likable characters. It's even got a little bit of Buffy in a way. You've got your special chosen one character who's got the powers kind of thing. So it's excellent, and I think like I almost feel like it's become so big that it's very easy to be kind of snooty about it and say, "Oh, it's become too successful." It's the TV show version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something like that. And I think that's unfair because I think Stranger Things, like season two, while it's a bit more uneven, I think its highs are higher than season one. I think season one's better because of the consistency. I think season three is the best season, and I loved that season four rather, went darker and went more slasher movie esque. I love season four. I love season three. I love season two. I love season one. I love all four seasons. I am pretty confident that season five will stick the landing because I don't think they've faltered too much. Any faults they've had have been very minor and not like sort of big. You know, some people hate that one episode in season two where she goes off to the city. Like, I get it, but like all that stuff when she comes back though is fantastic. And I think Stranger Things, unlike all these nostalgia sequels, I think Stranger Things benefits from being like this blend of everything. It's about being a love letter to the types of movies that were made in the 80s, as opposed to trying to just, hey, look at this thing being cool from the one thing. Stranger Things doesn't have the moment where it's like, look at this thing that's so cool from this movie, and we're going to make it super important to the plot. Like, it doesn't really do that in the same way. It's more about creating the feeling of the movies of that time period. Yeah, it has references, obviously, but it's I don't know. For the most part, I don't think the references are that intrusive. There was one awkward one in season three where Lucas brings up how much he likes New Coke. That one felt forced. But the fact that a show that's filled with references like Stranger Things is only has one that comes to mind that bothers me is actually very impressive. So yeah, so that's my thing about Stranger Things. It's more about recreating the feeling of the movies of that time period, and it's transitioned. I think season four was obviously a lot more Nightmare on Elm Street, whereas three was the giant monster, two was a lot more aliens. Like, they've really managed to tap into different things that it's always felt fresh. So but I think the storytelling has been great, especially when it comes to the main group stuff and the main like Vecna stuff in season four was so good. I love Stranger Things, so I think Stranger Things at least gets to the B tier. I think it's above uh these other things. Like if you're asking me compared to Avatar, which is also unfinished right now, Stranger Things means more to me right now, for sure. And I've rewatched Stranger Things, and I don't rewatch a lot of modern TV because I don't have time. But I rewatched seasons one, two, and three before four because I really wanted to watch them again. So this is so tough, but I actually think I might place it above Lost. I think it might just slot in there right now. It's tough though. Like I don't feel confident in a lot of this. Like, this is really hard. Like, this is so difficult. But I think I put it there. I think as a whole, it might be slightly more satisfying at Lost when it's done. Maybe it even rises above the other things that I've got in front of it right now. I don't know, but that's where I'm putting it. Which leaves me with kind of a fun final franchise, and that's Power Rangers. Now I left out superhero stuff because even though they're technically science, Superman's an alien, it's science fiction, like, but I left those things out because by and large I consider superheroes to be separate, um, and that's fine. And Power Rangers are technically superheroes, but it comes from Japanese like shows that are very much inspired by Godzilla. It's about kaiju and giant robots more than anything else. It felt like I should put this in here. So it's an interesting one to compare as well because I grew up in Power Rangers. Power Rangers, in many ways, was the first franchise that I loved. Right? Obviously, it's not something that I can appreciate the same way as an adult, but the nostalgia is off the charts because when I was 5 through like 8, all I was doing was watching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And a little bit of like I think Zeo came after. Like I sort of was gone by the time Turbo was around, but that first few years of Power Rangers is such a big, big deal in my childhood. Now, obviously, I can't rank it above a lot of things, right? But given how important it is to my childhood and how special it is to me, it does feel like it ranks kind of high just because of that. Because I grew up watching the show and the first movie, as goofy as some of it is, I had all the toys for several years. I there's a fondness to this in my childhood that honestly I think somehow, despite all odds, I'm judging this very differently than I'm judging a lot of these, but I think I have to at least put it in the B tier. It's too important to me. It's too important to my like development as a fan of these concepts. Like I probably wouldn't be into superheroes quite the same way if it wasn't for Power Rangers. I probably wouldn't have gravitated towards Godzilla if it wasn't for Power Rangers and its monsters. And it's even it's the Green Ranger's Dragon Zord is basically a Mecha Godzilla. Like it's basically what it is. So there we go. As much as I've kind of organized them in order in each row, I wouldn't read too much into the orders that much either. Just because, like, I'm looking at the S tier. Like, I like Aliens is my favorite movie. I like Aliens more than Back to the Future, but Back to the Future is such a consistent trilogy that I feel like it goes there. Um, yeah, yeah. I think I'll leave it there. At a certain point, I just have to say that's it, and just like, nope, I'm done. That's my tier list for now. Maybe one day we'll revisit it when I've seen more stuff. There's more franchises to do, maybe. But there you go. That's my science fiction franchise tier list. Hopefully that was fun. Somehow this ended up being longer, despite the fact that there was much less. Do you know what I think it is? There was so many like franchises in that horror one that I was like intentionally trying to speed through it as quickly as possible because I knew it was tons. Here I came in too comfortable. I was like, there's not that many. I can take my time. And now we're hitting 2 hours. So hopefully that was enjoyable to hear me struggle and rant about why I'm putting things where they are. Hopefully you had fun. Give me your rankings and your favorite sci-fi franchise in the comments. If you want to support all the content and keep all this crazy stuff coming, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Support us over there. And by all means, suggest other tiers to do. I won't do tiered movies from a year because that's top 10 project material or stuff that we're likely to do on, countdowns in the podcast, like top 25 of this decade. I won't do those things as tiers, but franchises, characters, things like that, or just even goofier ideas, maybe. Suggest in the comments. I'm happy to hear them. And maybe I'll do some. So, yeah, thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time. Happy movie watching or something. I'm so hungry.